Well, think of it in terms of the two words. Democracy is self-government, right? Straightforward, we think about institutions like elections and the free press and so on. The deliberation part is the quality of the discourse that goes on in the course of making decisions, whether we're talking about the public or the government itself. So is it analytical? Is it full of good argument? Are people considering different points of view respectfully? If it has those elements, then it's a deliberative democracy. The purpose of the workshop is to help understand what are the most pressing kind of research questions or questions for the field. It's a very practical field. The theory and practice of deliberative democracy isn't a faith. It doesn't just believe that certain things will work and they don't need to be tested. There's always a question of testing, refinement, not just what works, but why did it work? Because that'll help us in the future. No, there might be in the future. Right now what's happening with the Obama presidency is he's an embattled president. The Republican Party is the opposition, and they're pretty committed as a national organization to making sure he's not reelected. Up until these last elections, the goal was to take the House and possibly the Senate. So those are strictly political objectives without a particular concern for public participation. Partly as a result, but probably even prior to that, the Obama presidency as an executive is in campaign mode, is in permanent campaign. Many of the people in the campaign, including those who work on public outreach, are campaign staff. So you have two parties vying with each other for public approval, not so much looking for a new way to involve the public more meaningfully. Well, there are some things the U.S. is kind of famous for. If you think of Alexis de Tocqueville's Democracy in America, some of the things he celebrated we still have. And it's pretty good to hang on to these things over the centuries. Things like the jury system, which is practiced more robustly in the United States than any country in the world. The town meeting system in the northeastern part of the country, but then all across the United States there's a lot of local councils, a lot of sort of powerful local government that's very participatory. But having said that, there's some great innovations in the United States, but there's innovations in lots of countries around the world and in different regions. The European Union, India, Brazil, Australia, all of these countries and many more have made some really rich innovations in citizen participation. The U.S. at the state and local level has been a little experimental in trying some of those different things, but at the national level has not been particularly innovative. I like to remember Robert Dahl, one of my favorite democratic theorists, who said there is no such thing as a democracy in practice. There might be a polyarchy, level 1, 2, 3. He comes up with these ugly terms. The point is that there's a continuum. And when we look at democracy in Egypt, it's easy to despair and say, well, how could it become a democracy? Well, back off democracy for a second. Could they have elections? Could they have an election that is fair and competitive? I think they could. That's something. Right? Let's put some pieces in one at a time. Do they have a robust civil society? Well, maybe not, but there's probably pieces there. So I think if we back up from the question of can they be a democracy if they're missing this part, well, eventually they might be something further down the road toward a democracy. But if we're humble about our own governments, we can remember, oh, that's right, there is no democracy. There are governments that are better and better further down the road. And I think Egypt is probably moving down that road in a positive way. No. What it's doing is it's making it cheaper, faster, and easier to have a diffuse exchange of information and opinion. And that's worth something. To the extent that the public can communicate with itself in a more robust way, and there are many different publics all vying for each other's attention, we're more likely to hear different voices somewhere in that mix. But deliberation is partly about organizing and juxtaposing voices in a kind of systematic and very respectful way. That's not what's happening in the blogosphere or in the Twitterverse. People still tend to be very segregated ideologically and culturally, and they're having a wonderful time communicating, not so much across those lines of difference, So again, it helps, but we need, in fact, we need to develop online tools that more effectively bring together this swirling, churning mass of information we now have.